What is a senior developer? It's not just someone who has achieved level 8 on the scale of awesomeness. Most people have surprisingly vague notions of what distinguishes a senior developer. They just kind of judge it based on some loosey-goosey subjective thing. Like, I know a senior developer when I see it. I don't think that's very helpful. It's certainly not helpful for guiding junior developers and helping them grow so that they too can be senior one day. There's certainly more to it than having mad technical skills. Why should you care? It goes without saying, I hope, that you're not there yet. If you think you are, you're really arrogant. And it's good to know what you're aiming for, since you're not there yet. It's helpful for, say, a hiring manager to think about a couple of questions when evaluating a potential hire. And just as an aside, hiring developers is super hard. But if you're trying to just gauge, is someone a senior developer or not, a couple of questions I think are instructive. First, how much direction will this person need? This is the most obvious question. If they constantly need hand-holding, they're probably not there. Perhaps slightly less obviously, how much direction will they be able to provide to others? This definition still isn't quite adequate, but it's better than some that I've seen. Some people are tempted, I think, to consider only the first question, but the second is incredibly important. Since you're just beginning your careers, how can you use these criteria to guide your growth as young professionals? The folks at Frontside came up with a really great framework for how they determine seniority. The intersection of how well a person works independently and leads, that's what we just talked about, how technically capable they are, like the scale of awesomeness, and how well they connect and contribute to a larger community. So the intersection of these three things: leadership, technical capability, and community, which they also label connectedness, community or connectedness. So at the center of this Venn diagram is the senior developer. But each of these three tracks has a junior to senior path of its own. If this is beginning to sound like a lot of work, good, it is. Believe it or not, you cannot reach the top of your field in 3 weeks. So let's take a closer look at each of the three tracks. First, the most obvious track, technical capability. A person with high technical capability is technically curious, tackles problems without giving up, and produces solutions that less experienced folks can use, maintain, and learn from. Writing code that only you can understand and maintain doesn't help anyone, including yourself. That is not how you win friends and influence people. Notice that knows every API under the sun without looking at documentation isn't on the list. Miles. I showed these slides to him last night, and just a couple of minutes ago, he thought of something that would be good to point out at this point. But since I can't show the slides on Apple TV at the same time as I look at my notes, I'm going to need Seth to tell me what the quote was. And I think he added something else to that chat that I haven't seen yet. But basically, there's an Einstein quote that it's a really good illustration here.
You want me to just read it?
Yeah, I could paraphrase it, but I'd rather hear the real thing.
There's a story about Einstein in which he has to look up his own phone number in the phone book for a reporter. When the reporter asks why such a smart man can't remember his phone number, he said, "There's no reason to fill my head with knowledge that can be so easily looked up." He also claimed to never memorize anything which could be looked up in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes kind of seems like an eternity to look things up now. But this is true. Sometimes when we look up documentation on screen in class, it's because we want to show you how to look stuff up in the documentation. Sometimes we genuinely don't remember exactly how that method works. Exactly which order the arguments are in, exactly which arguments get passed to a callback. You can't memorize all that stuff. And memorizing all that stuff is not the secret to being a technically capable developer. It's these things. Technical curiosity, tackling problems without giving up, the tendency to ship, in other words. I once worked with a guy who was kind of brilliant and really good at helping other people with whatever they were working on. He did kind of like remember the API for everything. And if you were stuck, he could pop over to your desk and help you work through it. He was really good at that. That dude could not ship a feature to save his life or save his job. He just could never get any actual work done. So would I call him a senior developer? Probably not. I'd call him a smart dude and a nice guy and kind of a great mentor. But you gotta work through things when you get stuck. It's okay to get help. It's okay to use Google, but you gotta ship. So moving on to leadership. A person with leadership skills knows how to develop and follow a sense of purpose in themselves and in others. We'll get back to a specific example of someone that you and I both know in just a minute. But to expound just a little bit, they're willing to point out, own, and fix things that are broken about their organization and in their own career tracks. It's not enough to just identify problems. They have to find them, own them, and fix them. That's leadership. The third trait, and perhaps the least obvious, connectedness or community. A person with community skills who can read. Don't take this personally. I'm getting tired of your voice this morning. I know, but you're still the only one who ever volunteers for anything. Come on, guys. Leadership, man. These are the future leaders of our community. You've still had just a little too much attention. Ivan, thank you. Can you please read the words on the board?
A person with community skills has a sense of being part of a larger whole.
You can stop there. A person with community skills has a sense of being part of a larger whole. Next part.
A desire to contribute. A sense that the other people, for example, coworkers, users, clients, are not simply characters in his or her own movie, but fully realized individuals.
That's right. Empathy, dog. That's connectedness or community. Again, we'll circle back to this. Important stuff. I'll be frank. Very few people reach the senior level in all three categories. Very few people even want to reach the senior level in all three. So at Frontless, we follow the same measure as Frontside, who came up with this model in the first place. And we say that if someone has reached the senior level in technical capability and one of the other two traits, and is at least mid-level in the third, we consider them a senior developer. So if you take nothing else from this talk, let it be this. Technical capability is not enough to qualify as a senior in our world. No one with mad technical skills wants to hear that, but we can't deliver the kind of product we need to and differentiate ourselves and satisfy our quest for excellence on technical skills alone. So we work with our employees, and yeah, there aren't that many of us, but we work with them to identify the areas in which they're interested in improving and we provide an environment in which we hope they're able to do so. So if I may use Seth as an example, Seth, may I use you as an example? Why, thank you. When Seth started at Fretless, he had already developed a very strong sense of leadership. His time at Apple was excellent preparation for this, regardless of what he chose to pursue next. Programming, becoming the best ditch digger the world has ever seen, becoming an even more swole bro. Whatever he did next, that experience was going to serve him well. I'm going to let him yap just a tad more. May as well yap into the microphone about that experience. Swole and swaggy. That's our bro Seth.
Thank you. Oh, you're not going to let me hide behind the podium?
Yeah, I need my glasses.
Oh.
I won't see this.
So, Davey got to yap for a long time about his life. So I thought it was only fair. Actually, I didn't ask to do this. He just kind of put me on the spot, but that's fine. Yeah, there was some advance warning. Yeah, so it really hit me when we were talking about the technical leadership or the technical ability is not enough, because that's something I've kind of relied on for my whole life. You're probably stronger in one of those three areas just kind of automatically by who you are, and you probably know what that is. Usually among computer science majors, that's probably technical ability for most of you. And that was certainly the case for me. So just a little background before we get to my time at Apple, where I really worked on the other parts. We'll go way back to my childhood. I was a very odd child. I have a tendency to get completely immersed in something. And as you might remember Davey mentioning, we both mowed lawns growing up. I kind of took that to possibly an unhealthy extreme. I think I was 11 or 12 years old, and I went up to my parents and I was like, I need to get a job. I need to buy stuff. And they're like, that's great, except you can't get a job until you're 14 because child labor laws. And I was like, screw that. I'm going to start mowing lawns. So I started pushing my lawnmower around the neighborhood and just asking people if I could mow their lawns. And got really into it. I would take lawnmower brochures to school and just read them during class. And memorize specs on engines and blade tip speed. It was really weird. And then, so by the time I graduated high school, I was mowing 60 lawns a week. And, I had bought 3 commercial-sized mowers and stuff. So that was my first foray into the business world. Yeah, so that was fun. And then, so I kind of went through the early part of my life just picking something and just going for it, whatever happened to happen at the time. So then when I went to college, when it came time to choose a major, I picked chemistry, which seems odd, but to me it seemed like that would be the easiest thing. And really my main reason for doing that was I had taken some AP chemistry courses, and so I was like, oh, I can get out of here real quick because I already have some credits. And that was my whole reason for picking a major. I didn't even want to go because honestly at the time with mowing that many lawns, I was making more money than my dad. And I was like, I don't really see the point in me going to college. He's like, well, you have to go to college. That's the rules. I'm like, well, fine, but I'm going to do something where I can get out real quick. So I picked chemistry.
How bizarre is this? He wants to go the easy route, so he majors in science.
Yeah, well, okay, it made sense to me at the time. So took a couple, 22-hour semesters and stuff. Graduated in 3 years with a chemistry degree. And then I decided I want to be a professional wakeboarder. And so I got completely obsessed with wakeboarding after that. And I moved to Florida, bought a boat, started wakeboarding. But then we had the whole like invading Iraq thing, which did not do well for gas prices and does not do well for trying to run a boat every day so you can learn how to wakeboard. So I had to give that dream up, unfortunately. But not before my friends were all tired about hearing about wakeboarding, because, like I said, I get a little obsessive about stuff. So then I actually did something in my field.
Where he met an FBI agent named Johnny Utah and started robbing banks.
So then I actually got a job doing chemistry. I worked for a pharmaceutical company in Miami, because that's where I already was at the time. And after about 3 or 4 months, I was like, well, this is boring. The jobs you can get as just like a bachelor's in chemistry was, honestly, you could probably train a monkey to do them. But like, because it's the pharmaceutical industry, you have to have somebody with a degree to do them. So like all the interesting stuff is done by people with masters and PhD. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to go to grad school. And so I applied. Also, I only apply to one school at a time. I don't know why. I just figure I'll get in. I don't know. So I applied to Notre Dame and got in. And I did not realize, even though I grew up in Indiana, that it was in Indiana. It always seemed like an East Coast school to me. So yeah, I got in, and then they sent me the plane ticket to come visit. And I was like, why am I flying to South Bend? That's really weird. So I went up there. I did chemistry. I did 2.5 years of grad school in chemistry. And then I got kind of bored with that. And, because I was in school with these people that were like really passionate about chemistry. And I was like, I'm pretty good at this, but these guys really love chemistry.
So it's no lawn mowing.
Yeah, it is not. It is not the same passion I felt for lawn mowing. Man, now I don't even know where I'm going with this. Let's see. Dave, your interjections. Yeah, so I left grad school. I was like, well, we'll do something different. So I became a mechanical engineer for a company. We made biomass furnaces, which was great because we were building these furnaces and I got to burn stuff every day. So that was fun. And then I got an iPhone. I bought my first iPhone. It was the original, off of my roommate at the time. And so I had it about a week. I'm like, this is super cool. I'm going to go work for Apple. So I did. I went to the store at Keystone Mall, and I was like, I want to work here. And they're like, well, what do you think you would do? I was like, well, I'm pretty good at technical stuff, so I want to be on the technical support team. And they're like, well, we don't need that. We need sales. I was like, all right, fine. I just want to get in here, so I'll do that. But I'm just letting you know I'm going to be in charge of your technical support within 2 years. So it took 1.5 years. But yeah, I just studied all the technical stuff and all their training material in my spare time. And then at 2 years, at 1.5 years into it, I got put in charge of the technical support team. And I will not lie to you, I was absolutely terrible at it. It was so if you look at the series of events that occurred so far in my life, all of them relied on me teaching myself how to do something, which just, if you look, like I said, everybody is going to be good at one area more than the others in this. And so mine was technical capability. I knew how to really dive into something, learn something, get good at it. And for the first time in my life, I was doing something where that was not the skill that I needed. I needed to have connectedness with my team, with customers. I needed to have leadership skills, and nothing I had done to that point had anything to do with those, and I was absolutely terrible. I think I was about 3 months into the job being in charge of the support team, and our market director pulled me into the office, and she's like, I don't think this is working out. I don't feel like you were ready for this. And that was probably the first time in my life that I had heard that, and it was very disheartening, I guess you would say, for me. And I was pretty mad about that for a while. But then I got, yeah. And so I was thinking about it later, and part of me was just like, okay, I guess this isn't what I want to do. This isn't my life goal. I'm just going to go get another job doing something technical. And then I thought, well, with what you really want to do with your life, like actually like make an impact somewhere, maybe they've got a point. Maybe you just actually are really terrible at this stuff, but maybe you could get better. And so it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Up until that point, I don't think I'd worked for anybody else other than myself, because I mowed lawns for myself for a long time. But actually working for people, I don't think I'd stayed anywhere longer than maybe a year to a year and a half, just because I kept jumping to other places. I would get in there, learn the technical stuff, get bored, and move somewhere else. But because I was so terrible at leadership and connectedness, it took me another 5.5 years to get to the point where I finally felt like I had learned those skills to a sufficient degree. And it was a very humbling experience. I had to basically admit to myself and admit to my bosses that I had no idea what I was doing, reach out to them for help, and really go into each day feeling like, okay, I need to learn something today. I'm going to put myself specifically into a situation that makes me uncomfortable and is stretching these skills that I'm not particularly good at. And it took a long time, but gradually, I would say it took 2 years of trying really hard to even get to a basic level of competence, and then probably another 3 years to feel like I was actually good at it. Because it's very, very different to teach yourself how to do something. And I think in the previous slide where we were talking about empathy, like to realize that the other people are fully realized independent individuals just like you are, and being able to get the skills needed to influence their behavior. It was one thing for me to get really good at solving technical issues. I could definitely do that, but how do I teach the 50 other people on my team to be able to solve technical issues as well? Because ultimately, to be able to have a positive effect, one person can only help so many customers in a day. But if I can make 50 team members be able to help 5 more customers per day, that's more than I could ever take myself, regardless of how good I ever got. So it took a long time to do that. But anyway, point of all that is you probably are aware of what your strengths are, looking at these when you see these different categories and have seen the descriptions. And I would just encourage you to specifically seek out opportunities to work on the other ones, seek mentors for that, put yourself in jobs or other sorts of volunteer situations where you have opportunities to work on that sort of thing. Because, if getting a senior developer job is your eventual goal, you definitely need all 3. And really just anything in life, to be honest. To be really actually good at something and to be a good human being, you probably need all 3 to at least some degree. So that's my story.
Thank you, Seth. This feels very much like a support group all of a sudden. The applause. So, the specifics of my story are pretty different, but that's not an unusual path for someone who eventually becomes reasonably well-rounded. To your point about like Miles being this awesome, amazing human being, like when I met him, I think the thing that he had, he was basically at the exact same level I was technically. Both competent, both probably not quite as good as we thought we were. But he had a really well-developed sense of community, I think. And he's achieved like a master level of that skill. And that's a rare thing, and that's kind of what sets him apart from another person who just is able to churn out good code at a reasonable rate. And it's just really, really important for relationships and work and everything. So it's worth taking the time. For me, when I started to improve in that area was sometime during that first year after college when I had 4 jobs in succession, not at the same time, not like I was working super hard. I was just quitting everything I started. something that we shared in those early years. But I was around a person that I couldn't stand. And one day, a group of us were sitting around just like talking crap about this guy. I wasn't saying much, but everyone else was like describing why they couldn't stand this person. And I was listening to all these descriptions, and I was thinking, holy crap, that's me. I had all those same traits, not maybe magnified to quite the same degree, but it was still really, really eye-opening and life-changing. The life-changing part took a really embarrassingly long time, and I'm still not there yet. For example, I kept interjecting crap into what Seth was just doing. Like, why did I do that? Like, I just couldn't resist the opportunity to make a little joke or whatever. Like, stop that crap, man. But I just can't. I'm not quite there yet. But that kind of stuff. Anyway, so back to the original story. When Seth started at Fretless, he had just gotten out of a coding boot camp. So he was new to coding. And we don't really hire juniors. But because of just the way he had worked on himself, and it had been within the context of working at Apple, he came in with the other two, really strong in the other two traits. Leadership. He absolutely knew how to develop and follow a sense of purpose. And what he had really developed was an ability to achieve that in others. So the very first thing he helped us with was teaching a previous iteration of this class. And that's what that's all about. That's about helping others grow. And he was capable of that. Community, that empathy, a desire to contribute, a sense that the other people are fully realized individuals. Another thing that he started doing as soon as he got out of coding boot camp was going back to like all of the events that coding boot camp held and meeting the new students and giving them advice and teaching some 1 hour lunch and learn kind of events with them. He didn't get all this new knowledge and then hoard it. He shared it with other people. And that's really hard to find. That's really hard to find with someone who actually has some technical capability, especially, yeah.
So what in like the interview or like hiring process in Seth did you see? Because like obviously you're not hiring before seeing all this, right?
Yeah, kind of. So there was a little bit of a gut sense. So we met because he attended a boot camp that I taught. And that was just a 1 week. Who thinks this is fairly intensive? This 3 week boot camp. Nobody actually thinks this is intensive? Man, we did a crappy job. Okay. Well, at least some of you think that this thing has been kind of intensive. That was a 1 week, 7-day, 12-hour a day boot camp. Not my idea. It was inhumane to teachers and students alike. And it's just not an environment that really is healthy and that really fosters learning, because also there was a mandate to build 3 complete apps in 7 days of about the same complexity as Future Note, or whatever we called it, Note Herder. At that time, I can't remember what I called it, Nevernote or Notely or something at that time. It was written in a different language. I've written that stupid note editor in so many different languages now. Like we were supposed to build 3 things of that complexity in a week, 12-hour days, with folks who came in with about as much experience as you had, or less. Some of them had never programmed in any language before. Impossible to do, really. All I could hope to do as the teacher was get through the material, like talk fast enough and make few enough mistakes on screen that at least I could build these apps in 7 days. And at best, if they went back and tried to actually teach themselves the stuff, they would be seeing it for the second time instead of the very first time. But to actually get something out of the material and to kind of know it was a JavaScript thing. It was JavaScript and Angular in a week. To actually come away with any knowledge of that stuff, it's pretty dang hard. Plus, I was going to crash and then sleep for a week straight. Because holy cow. And Seth, I could tell pretty quickly, was actually learning the stuff. And he started helping the other students. I didn't ask him to do that. He just did it. Like the person sitting next to him was sort of struggling, and he'd help catch her up. And that really impressed me. And just over the course of the week, I was just kind of impressed with his work ethic, and as well as just how fast he learns, which is, again, the technical capability part and the part that, to some degree he was probably born with. I was just very impressed by that. And that was August, and a month or two later, you either texted me or called me and said, hey, I'm thinking about going to this 12-week boot camp at the Iron Yard. What's your opinion of the Iron Yard? Do you think I should do it? I said, due to my affiliation with another boot camp, perhaps I'm not allowed to tell you that. I'm not quite sure. But I think it's really good. I think it's a much better way to learn this stuff. Spending 12 weeks on it. In 12 weeks, you can actually learn a ton, especially if you study as hard as you do and do enough work on your own time. You can really learn a lot in that length of time. So, yeah, I highly recommend it. And he did that thing. And meanwhile, we had committed to partnering with TechPoint on this thing, a previous version of this thing. And we did that without quite knowing how we were going to fulfill that. We knew I was going to do it, but it's too big a job for one person. And not just the yapping all day part, but trying to help people, trying to help them with the homework when they get stuck, answer their questions, all that kind of stuff. Keep up with the notes every day, because as you notice, we put pretty detailed notes up there. Because if we didn't, and this was another problem with that other boot camp, there was to be no written material. Like, we weren't allowed to provide written material along with the stuff. No reference material. Always in the code. How is that helpful? Well, I really hated that part. So by golly, I was determined that we were going to have really good notes. So, I could stay up till 3 a.m. writing the notes every night, or I could get help. And, as amazing a human being as Miles is, he was like, not it. So I was like, well, hey, there was this boot camp student, Seth. I think he'd be really good at this. So the interview process was like this. Hey, Seth, want to help me with a boot camp?
Sure.
You feel ready to teach other people a framework you don't know yet?
Nope.
Cool, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So yeah, that's actually about how that went. There wasn't really an interview process. Haha, this is great. This is awesome.
By the way, 3 weeks into this 8-week boot camp, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks.
I had no choice. It was a family thing. I couldn't get out of it. So yeah, you're gonna be the head teacher for 2 full weeks in the middle. But it's not like it was this year where we teach a 3-week thing 3 times. This was new material all 9 weeks. And also, we hadn't had time to prepare it enough, so the material for those 2 weeks wasn't written yet. Can you write and teach 2 weeks worth of material and have it ready in 3 weeks? In a framework you don't know? Yeah, how's that sound, buddy? Did you do it?
Barely.
But you did it, and it worked out pretty well. And I mean, believe me, I recognize that this was a completely unreasonable request. And I tried other things. I tried to get someone else, like some people who worked for some of the local businesses and who use that framework every day. I tried to get them to volunteer to be guest speakers and all this stuff, and it just didn't work out. So like the one thing I was able to offer, like as an apology, was we told one of our other clients, you know what, you just can't have Alex this month. He's going to sit in and help us with this class, and then he'll come back. Okay, sorry, but we need him really, really bad. So we did have one of the other Frontlessians in the room with him while he taught, and I hope that helped. Good. So yeah, that was not hopefully you'll never be put in quite that much of a sink or swim position, but hey, you learn real dang fast if you do, and or you are paralyzed and you don't make it. But that's a really good test of your resolve and your ability to not give up and to when faced with what seems like a near impossible task, get through it. So the first time that I taught one of those 7-day, 12-hour-a-day things, because you might think you'd do that once and then never again, because it's brutal. I did that like 8 times. And here's the really insane thing. So the way this started, someone emailed Miles, because he's the organizer of the local Ruby meetup, and said, hey, do you know anyone who wants to teach Ruby? He was like, yeah, my business partner likes that crap for some reason. And I was really excited to be able to teach that. And Dave Jones, that other guy, that other legend, living legend, Dave Jones, was also kind of excited about that idea. So we're like, hey, yeah, you can have the two of them, and we'll teach this thing. They're like 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And for some reason, we weren't like, haha, nope. We agreed to do it. And then they were telling us a little about the program, and they're like, so we're going to teach iOS development, we're going to teach Android development, and we're going to teach Ruby. And I was like, well, gosh, you should be teaching JavaScript and web stuff. It was like, cool, you know anyone who could teach that? And we were like, I mean, yeah, I guess we could do that too. And they're like, cool, so here's how it's going to be. You're going to teach your first 7-day, 12 hours a day boot camp, and then 2 weeks later, you're going to do another 7-day, 12-hour-a-day boot camp in a different language. And we were like, sounds reasonable. We have to come up with the material too. Okay, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's how many hours of material? Holy crap. Sure, why not? We believe in ourselves. We can do it. Right, Dave Jones? Oh, he has materialized. Speak his name 3 times. Poof. In comes Dave Jones. So this is another situation where we were in an absolutely terrifying scenario. And we could have, I mean, I don't really know what the options are. Fail miserably and get fired and never find work again, or find a way to get through it. And I'm still not quite sure how we got through that first JavaScript class just 2 weeks after we did the first Rails class. But we did, and we survived, and we taught a whole bunch more of them. And then, sooner or later, we got opportunities to do stuff like this, where it's a little more humane for the students. We have a little more time to actually prepare material and hopefully design it in a way that people can learn. Hopefully you learned something during all of this. But yeah, sometimes you will probably get thrown in a scary situation like that. In both of these cases, we kind of volunteered. But hey. So anyway, technical capability alone is not enough. Work toward these things. We'll put a link to the original blog post that this idea came from in the notes. It's too bad Dave Jones didn't get here in time to see this presentation, because it's neat. He could have learned a thing or two. No. But he could have heard us talking about him a little more. So that's that talk.